Hello, everybody. Thank you again for continuing to spread the word about the podcast. Thank you for sharing it with your friends. And also, thank you for sending suggestions of who to interview. I'm definitely taking those under advisement. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some social media specifically for the podcast so that we can kind of discuss things there. And so with that said, I would like to play the interview that I conducted with a good friend of mine who I've known for a long time, one Stephen Edgerton, who is a current member of the U.S. Army Band. He marched for 2 HBCUs, and I was really interested in learning his perspective as to how his military experience, his HBCU band experience trained him for the military. So he has a very unique story. And I do also want to add that at the time of me recording this, I mean, literally just minutes ago, I found out that the band director that Stephen refers to, his high school band director, passed away. So his name was Mr. Edgerton. I don't think he's related to Stephen Edgerton, but I just wanted to, give my condolences to him because, Stephen was just mentioning him. So, so without further ado, here is my interview. Stephen Edgerton from North Carolina Central University, you're currently in the Army Band.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I'm glad that you were able to do this with me because, first of all, I was glad to just, talk to you. And then also, I think you have a unique journey being that, you went to 2 HBCUs, right?
Right, I did. Winston-Salem State and North Carolina Central.
And then you transitioned that to a military career.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about your hometown and how how you got into playing your tuba, because that's your main instrument. So tell me about that.
Right. Well, I'm originally from Durham, North Carolina, born and raised. I started tuba in high school. Actually, my first instrument was my very first instrument was actually violin. But as far as band-wise, my first instrument was euphonium. In North Carolina, we started 7th grade and 7th grade band. I know a lot of other schools kind of start maybe earlier, but Rogers Hur, which is in North Carolina, I started in euphonium. And actually, I chose that because it was the one instrument that nobody else raised their hand to play.
Why did nobody want the tuba? What was it about? I'm sorry,
right?
euphonium, right?
We didn't really have a tuba then. Or maybe, everybody was just so locked on all these other instruments. You got your saxophone lovers, the drum, drum lovers, stuff like that. So nobody was really, I guess, looking for the tuba back that early. But I got to high school and Mr. Edgerton, the legendary Clark. But he was like, I think I want you to play tuba. And I was like, yeah, okay. And part of that was because I was the only freshman. I was one freshman and there was like 5 or 6 seniors. So he knew kind of my musical ability of picking it up, and and he would have somebody with longevity to help out with the other people that learned. So that's kind of how I started, and I fell in love from there.
Okay, good. Yeah. So in high school you played for 4 years, and you and your high school. What was your high school?
Hillside.
Hillside High School.
Hillside in Durham. Hillside for a long time in Durham was, it was like kind of one of the illustrious bands. Like Mr. Edgerton was definitely a legend. Not just in Durham, but in history, he was like one of the first Black high school directors in the National Band Directors Association. He was a who's who of high school band directors. So growing up in Durham. Honestly, at some point, you were more excited about Hillside than like any other school. And back in the day, it was kind of either Hillside or Durham High. And Durham High has changed the name ever since. But you grew up learning, knowing about Hillside, from the parades or whatever. So, they were it was a unique band that mixed between core style and show style. It was one of those that could kind of do both. And, they won, over, 14, 15 superiors, at least in history, back in my day. And we were in the Inkwell movie, if some people are familiar with that. They've been on the Oprah show, it just has a very rich history, a rich background.
I didn't realize that Hillside was in the Inkwell. I love that
Oh,
movie.
yeah. Yeah. I was there. And, oh, man, we shot that from it was 6 to 6,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a very good experience. And, one of the great things is my brother, of course, my brother, David Edgerton Jr., who was a very prominent arranger for A&T back in the 90s.
Yeah, and I marched with him too.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he had written a song that we played on the set, and they weren't going to use the song. They were going to use whatever movie music that they had chosen, but they had to pay him for the rights to buy it, to kind of buy the rights to it, in order to use their own music, which was kind of cool. So that was a cool thing. But yeah.
So, you graduate from high school and then you go to Winston-Salem State. Now, before we even go there, what made you choose Winston-Salem State as a school?
I really have a funny story about that. Actually, a lot of my instances with HBCU, as far as band concerned, it's pretty intricate stories. I actually didn't think I was going to college, and when I tell my story, a lot of my friends or people, are kind of shocked about that. But I didn't think I was going to school. I was a pretty decent student, so I wasn't an A student, but I did okay. And I was just like, I guess I at least just graduate and get a regular job or whatever. But the funny thing is, Dr. Barney Smart, rest in peace, the great director for Hampton, he came to Hillside one day, and Mr. Edgerton came and got me out of class. And I was sitting there like, man, what do you want? I already kind of, I already had kind of a self-defeat, pretty much, kind of my mind made up that, but I went in and he's like, I want you to play for this band director. I didn't know who he was, he's like, I want you to play, for this band director, kind of audition. I'm sitting there like, audition, like, I'm not going to school, I'm not going to make it, So I went in and I auditioned for him, and he was really impressed, which, I don't know, I guess it shocked me. You can be a great performer, you can be a great musician, you can be great to other people, but depending on how you look at yourself, that's kind of the difference, and I just, I thought I was all right. But he got me accepted pretty quickly. And then, he was like, yeah, I would really like to have you, so I would really like you to, consider Hampton, as an opportunity, a possibility. And I'm still kind of in shock because I'm like, all right, whatever, I'm saying I'm not going to school. But that kind of led to me kind of auditioning for some other directors. And, this interest kind of started building, not that I'm anybody important, but, at the same time, this interest started building in me, there was, and I'm like, I kind of went to my mom, was like, what do you think? She was like, well, try this far, just see how far you can get if you just try. So over time, it came down to the last week, and my best friend Brian was going to Winston-Salem State.
Oh, God.
And I went to a summer camp there. I went to a summer music camp there. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. The people are pretty cool, So like literally about the week before school started,
Wow.
my mom's like, all right, we're going to pack your stuff up. We're going to drive to Winston. If everything the director's talking about is okay, I'm going to leave you. If not, you're coming back, get a job, whatever. So so that's how, I got to Winston, and, everything was legit. The band director, kind of took care of everything, and, I was left, and that's where I was.
Wow, man. So I'm learning this new stuff about you now because, I knew that you went to Winston at first, but I never would have taken you as a guy that was like, oh, well, I don't think I'm going to go to college. Like,
a lot of people, because, I was kind of one of those that, in high school, that, I could just pick up something and play it, but like I said, it all kind of comes down to how you see yourself, and, that's really it. But, once that interest started, and my brother kind of talked to me, he was like, man, you should go for it. I was like, well, maybe I do got something to offer, you know.
Good. Yeah. Okay. So you were at Winston-Salem State for your first year.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like that first game of the season, well, one of the first, because we're the same year, and so
Right, right.
A&T and Winston played each other, and I remember that was actually
Listen.
that was my 18th birthday. That's why I will never forget that. That was my 18th.
Wow.
And so,
You
so
know,
and,
I
and,
know.
and then you fast forward to, some years
Right.
later, you and I get to meet, and it kind of like, oh wow, we were playing against each other. I didn't realize that. So
Yeah.
so
That game was really significant to me. It was a really significant point in my life because at that time my brother was still marching. You know, and so of course, you growing up being the little brother, and my brother's a trailblazer.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows that. He's work ethic, everything. And I kind of grew up as like little Dave, kind of in school or whatever. But that was like the first time that we were on a level playing field.
Right.
I got a band uniform. I'm saying he got a band uniform over. That's like one of the first times in my life that I'm looking eye to eye to him.
Did your mom go to that game?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I bet it was hard for her.
It's kind of hard. They're trying to find some middle ground. I really want to say she was on. I really want to say she was on A&T side. I kind of want to say that I remember, but of course after that, most often she was on Central side because she kind of tipped over towards Central because she was she went to Central, so she was alumni. So
right, okay,
maybe tip the scale.
Okay, so let's go to your time at Winston. So because I know we've got to go to when you transfer to Central and then you become drum major, and I don't want to spoil it all, but so your first year at Winston, like what was that like for you? And you can talk about it as far as band or your studies or like just how was it that first year?
I mean, I was like a big ball of energy because like I said, it was so exciting. It's like, wow, I made it. You know what I'm saying? Like wow, I made it in school. I got a scholarship. And it was such an exciting. It was an exciting experience, and and band wise, it was definitely a new experience. Especially the time that we came in, and some of the methods of practice, and some of the methods of bonding that were utilized at the time.
Lines on that one.
But what happened is they actually made me the freshman section leader. I became like one of the first freshman section leaders in the history of probably that section or whatever. Wow. So I mean, it was me and like 8 freshmen and like 2 upperclassmen, and so yeah, I kind of I was a little more under the microscope in many areas, in many aspects than everybody else. But
so how did that end up working out? Like, being a freshman section leader.
Well, they kind of observed me for a little while because, like I said, it was only 2. There were 2 upperclassmen, and maybe like and there were a few old heads that that kind of those that kind of come to practice and kind of help out or whatever. But I mean, I just kind of had a better, I kind of had a higher musical sense. I want to say this, humbly, while also, kind of recognizing, they kind of just recognized that I was just a little further ahead, as far as skill, and as far as being personable and, congeniality, and maybe just leadership potential. And so, they was like, yeah, we're going to make you, we're going to make you the section leader. We think you got what it takes.
Okay.
Okay.
So what made you transfer to North Carolina Central? Because that's where you ended up finishing and things.
Yeah, well, that was kind of more of a financial issue. We'll come to find out that there were some issues as far as the handling of funds, and which kind of affected, there were some kind of underlying practices that were not productive.
Okay.
And so that kind of affected, some scholarships and just, some of the ethical sense of, what was going on. So I made a decision, it's better I just come home, I could stay at home. I still, getting a scholarship, I still offered a scholarship from Mr. Kaysen, at Central. So that plus, I walk about, a little over half a mile to school.
Yeah.
That kind of, it kind of worked out. And what's funny is I kind of want to go to Central in the first place, but, at the time, I just didn't feel like, I was getting kind of the attention that, but now later on looking at it and talking to it and communicating everything, I can kind of understand, because, you're freshman, you're like, oh, what about scholarships? What about money? What about stuff like that? But it kind of worked. It still worked out because I ended up at Central, and it was, it was a good decision for me.
Okay. So you get to Central and it's your sophomore year. And so tell me how that was. Like, how was your band camp? Like, they knew that you went to Winston-Salem State at first, and like, were there any expectations of you? Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, well, a lot of them, like they recognized me from Winston, of course, but quite a number of them were from Durham, and were already kind of people I were familiar with, or kind of went to high school with. So, they were happy, they were glad to see me, and they saw me kind of as an asset. And actually, more of the thing I was worried about was how Winston was going to see me when I when I saw them,
Right. So what happened when Central played Winston-Salem State? How was that first game?
Oh, listen, I was so, I was really nervous. I was really nervous because I really stood out, at Winston, because the tuba section, we were known as Fiberglass Fools. We kind of did our own kind of thing. We kind of had our own theatrics, our way of going about stuff in the game, that really, that we were really seen and known for. So to go from the leader of that, over to, like a different school, kind of like the enemy or whatever, I was cognizant of, thinking like, man, I might get booed on the sideline, especially us lining up on the, on the opposing side.
You get chicken bones thrown at you.
Right. I'm sitting there like, man, I need to hide my face behind my tuba bell or something. But the exact opposite happened, which was really overwhelming and kind of showed me, some of the love as far as HBCU and Black unity. Surprisingly, the opposite, the people that recognized me and saw me was clapping. It's like, we see, and someone was like, you still around, we still love you, and it was mad love. And, I was just like, it was really overwhelming. I was just like, wow, because I really thought that else would go a different way. But,
okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah, it really was.
So do you become drum major that next year?
Yeah, I marched 1 year's tuba, and that next year, I became drum major.
So what was that? What was that about? Did your director just tell you, "Hey, I think you have these qualities"? Did you try it out? Like,
right? Yeah, it was it's a funny story. Yeah, around, I want to say spring drills or whatever, the year before, he called me into the classroom, and he sat me down. Was like, "Hey, I think you're really influential. Saying I love your, everybody loves your enthusiasm. Saying you're always, giving 100%. I want you to think about being drum major." And I kind of almost laughed in his face, because I was like, drum major, because in my mind, I said drum major is weak. I said, because in my mind, I thought I was contributing more as an instrumentalist, especially as a tuba player. I'm contributing to the sound, I'm contributing to the group, but the drum major, he's up front. Okay, he might be conducting, whatever like that. But I felt that was less of a contribution than what I was doing. And he said, okay. And I don't know, not many people know Mr. Kaysen. Mr. Kaysen is he's kind of a small man. He's like, maybe, I don't want to jack his dimensions up, but he was like maybe like 5'5", maybe like a $120, But his whole demeanor changed, and he went in on me. Like, and this is the first time I ever seen Mr. Kaysen like so intense. And he gave me a quick lesson about leadership and influence. And he kind of ended it with, if you don't think, being in a higher position of influence motivating more people, enhancing the program, by, being a leader over more people and, instilling in them that same enthusiasm and motivation, then you're the weak one. And I sat there like, man, did he just call me a punk? Right. But, he was right. He was right. And I was young, you're young, you kind of set in your mind, but I was open enough to, to take his perspective. And I was like, okay, okay, because he chose me, so I never, I didn't try out, like he chose me. And so I was like, well, let's do it.
Okay.
And so,
so your time as a drum major, what games stood out to you, or what kind of memories stood out to you when you think back at your time as a drum major?
Wow. Of course, all the Aggie Eagles.
Yes.
Of course, those stood out because those were, pretty prominent, big games, the giant crowds and everything. Not too many. I mean, I won't say not too many as far as being significant. I just, I approach every game, in its own entity, its own separate, in its own separate place, because I was more focused on, just the people, just making sure all the parts happen, because, a lot of times it was me, kind of leading, and calling the shots. Like Mr. Kaysen leaned a lot on me as far as leadership was concerned. Like I want to say it was 96, 96, like when I was solo by myself.
Right.
He'd come in band practice, like maybe Tuesday with a Post-it. I always show up to band practice early, like 15, 30 minutes. And he'd be like, okay, this is what I want to happen. And he would hand this Post-it to me, or this, card with all the drill, do drill, run this, blah, blah, blah. And then I might not see him for like 2 days. So I'm running practices.
Wow.
He's like, drum major, knock it out. And so,
you were the only guy in charge. So you had
I
to
was the only one in charge.
Right. Wow.
Right.
That is a lot. How did you maintain control of like your peers? Because that seems like a lot.
I mean, you're a leader. You find a way. And like I said, a number of them were my friends. And thankfully, of course, with the drum line, most of those, we went to school together. So, of course, them being one of the most difficult sections to control, thankfully, most of those were already kind of friends of mine. And a number of my friends in other sections were more like, okay, y'all check up. They kind of helped out with, authority. And I leaned. I mean, it's kind of like the military structure, as I find out. It's tiered down to the leaders. So really, I wasn't trying to control everything. I put the pressure on the section leaders, who in turn put the pressure on their section.
Okay, that makes sense.
You make the structure work how the structure is supposed to work.
Okay, I got you. So, all right, this is a good segue here. Let's talk about your military life. So what made you, how'd you find out about the Army Band, and what made you, want to try, and had you always wanted to be in the armed forces, or?
No, I didn't. I wasn't thinking about the Army. I wasn't thinking about military, anything. This recruiter stopped me in the mall, actually. Random. He was like, you look like you make a good soldier. And I was like, man, I ain't sweating no Army. I'm like, I'm a musician, because I was gigging at the time and, doing a lot of playing. And he was like, well, we got Army bands. And honestly, I had never heard of the Army Band before. So I was like, what? I was like, well, tell me more about it. And so, that's really kind of how it started. And, I kind of started looking into it and was like, wow, this kind of looks like a pretty decent opportunity, but I've always been kind of a jump in.
Okay. Yeah, because I wanted to ask you, like, because I figured that I would ask you today, like, why the Army and not in any of the other branches.
Right.
But it seems like it's just because that recruiter just approached you.
That recruiter just approached me. It wasn't on my radar at all.
Okay.
And so I was like, hey, it can't be too bad. If not, I can quit.
Right. So you finished your time at NC Central, and then you
graduated in '98.
Okay. And were you a music major?
I was a music major.
Okay. Tuba performance. Okay.
Yeah.
And so you just went straight in, basically, to basic training, and that's just how it was.
Well, it's about a year between me graduating and joining in. It's called like a delayed entry program, where you sign up, you get everything done, but they, it's the time that you come in is a little later. But I mean, during that time, I just did a lot of gigging because I'm a bass guitar player as well. So I just, did a lot of gigging and, around Durham and, surrounding areas and, just kind of prep myself, getting ready for what's to come.
Okay.
And then I joined in 99, like about February of 99.
Okay. So let's talk about your career progression as an Army musician. So I'm assuming that you just did basic training like anybody else.
Yeah.
And then after that, like what happened?
Right. So, of course, everybody kind of goes through basic training. And once you go to basic training, you go to what's called AIT, or Advanced Individual Training. And for us, that's the Military School of Music, and that's located in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of we call it tri-service because this Army, Navy, and Marines go through that school, to, get done, to get their, kind of military education. It's really where you learn the military way of doing your job. You already have to have a certain amount of, musical competency, education. But when you get there, that's, where they teach kind of the military side of what you'll be doing, like ceremonies and, concert band stuff and stuff like that.
Okay. So you tell me about some of the tours that you've done. Like, I know you lived overseas.
Right. Well, I lived in 5 states since I've been in. I mean, because I've been in 21 years now.
Wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah, it flies. But I lived in 5 states, and I've been overseas to Germany. I was stationed in Germany twice. And during my first tour there, I did spend 1 year in Baghdad, Iraq, deployed. But aside from that, wow, 10, 20 different countries we've visited and performed in. Prague, Romania, the Netherlands, Czech Republic, of course, Prague, Italy, Switzerland. I mean, you name it. We performed most of those places. I mean, it's really a great experience.
Yeah. And what are the states you lived in the U.S.?
Texas, Maryland, Virginia, Missouri, and of course here home, North Carolina.
In North Carolina. Okay, cool. Oh wow. See, it's just clicking with me that, like, when you and I first started, conversing with each other, you had just enlisted.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I didn't realize that. I just didn't put 2 and 2 together.
Because the 5th quarter, man, the 5th quarter was like a lifeline to me. Like, you don't understand. Because my first unit was in Missouri, Fort Leonard Wood. We call it Fort Lost in the Woods because it's in the middle of nowhere. Which most Army bases kind of are. But that was my first unit, my first duty station. There's nothing related to HBCU bands. Of course, not in my job, especially. But I always made a promise to myself that I was going to stay true to me. I was going to stay true to the HBCU band culture. And I was going to be a band head for life, regardless. And I showed that in a lot of different ways, some that got me in trouble.
You're definitely going back to that, but go ahead.
But, I think I found out about it just leaving Virginia, just leaving the School of Music. I heard about, the 5th quarter. So when I got to my unit, a little while later, I pulled it up on the computer and I was like, what? Like this whole HBCU band space, of everything I'm used to. I've been so far away from everything I'm used to, everything I love, everything that was my heart. And now here's this gateway of, back to it that can be my connection. So I'm gonna tell you a funny story because I lived about over a mile from the band hall, my barracks, where we, Soldier State was about a mile from the band hall. But they had a taxi service on post, and the taxi service was like $1.30, $1.40, something like that, to take you wherever you wanted to go on post. So, I would go to work, I'd do my work, do band stuff, whatever Army stuff needed to happen. I'd come home because I caught a ride with someone because, I didn't have a vehicle, in the beginning. I caught a ride with my, my barracks mate or whatever. Then later on, after I went home and ate, stuff like that, I would call a cab, catch a cab back to the band hall to get on the computer to be on the fifth quarter, like all night. You know? So all those times when we was, we were getting arguments, all this stuff, because, I was really active earlier.
Yeah.
Early in 2000,
Yeah. I know.
That, that's dedication.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel honored that you would even do that. I did not even realize.
I was just like, man, it was so important to me to stay connected, and so, you do what you got to do. Man, that was before I got my little compact dial up.
Yes.
So yeah, I was a dedicated.
So I got a couple more questions for you. So
okay.
One is, tell me how you got in trouble. Tell me how you incorporated some of your HBCU bandness into your military things.
Listen, I don't even think we have the time for all the stories, but a few that stand out is okay, at the School of Music, you would think it wouldn't be a struggle, but drill band, marching band was one of my biggest struggles. And that's because I struggled kind of getting that sway out. I mean, after like 4 or 5 years of, marching band, of HBCU band, So we're marching down the street, on tuba player, and come to find out, one of the instructors, like there are 2 instructors, that teach, marching band in the morning. And one day, one of the instructors was like, stop the band, halt the band, halt the band. Why do I keep seeing this one tuba bell in the back sway side to side? It was almost subconscious.
Right. Like breathing.
Right. And all the other tuba players, I mean, I'm like one of the few, black dudes that was there anyway. So all the other tuba players looking down the line like, what I mean? So that day, after that day, my name became, he called me either Mr. Gremlin or it's like Mr. Gremlin or Dr. FAMU.
Oh, Lord.
Because I think one of them, right? Because I think one of them had went to HBCU,
That's funny. So yeah.
Mr. Gremlin, stop swaying that tuba. Oh man.
That is great. That's great. Well, I know you got lots of stories about it, but I just want to, keep it short and sweet. But I do want to ask you, like
another one I got written up.
Yeah.
In Germany, a lot of times when we have ceremonies, a lot of ceremonies are in the morning. It's called change of command, where say one commander was swapping responsibilities with another one. It would be a big ceremony and stuff like that. Well, in Germany, we usually get up early for those. I mean, they were in the morning, but we have to get up kind of extra early just in case, we ran into traffic or, contrary to popular belief, sometimes the Autobahn does get traffic and get backed up, So we'll get up early. So, I would show up early, and every once in a while, if we had time, I would just start playing tuba punches. I would just start playing, old songs from when I marched. That was kind of, like I said, that was kind of my reaching back, staying connected, remember who I was. Well, I mean, it's like 6:30 in the morning, and I'm outside cranking like Transformers or, So we get back from the ceremony, go to lunch, come back in the afternoon. About 2:00, my commander's like, Sergeant Edgerton, let me talk to you for a minute. Calls me in the office. I don't know. He said, can you explain to me why I just got off the phone with Colonel, so-and-so, some name. He's asking me why he heard a tuba 6:30 this morning, waking him up, and he's on the other side of the base. And I laugh. Yeah, at first I'm like, yeah. But I gotta hold on, I gotta draw it back in because apparently I've been trouble.
Oh my gosh.
But inside I'm like, yeah, doc.
I can't with you. I cannot.
So he kind of gave me a nice talk, kind of talking to, but he understood, who I was. I wasn't like, a dirtbag or anything. I was one of his best soldiers. He just knew I was always, enthusiastic, especially when I had a sousaphone on. It was like I transformed into a different person. So it was kind of a nice reprimand, but he got chewed out, but he understood. So.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I'm gonna ask you one last question. I want to ask you is, do you have any like advice for anybody who might be listening to this, who, maybe is thinking about joining a military band, and like how their HBCU experience would help?
Really, everything I learned in my HBCU experience really taught me how to deal in the military. And throughout my years, it just became more and more and more apparent, especially as far as leadership, being in charge of soldiers, even over in deployment, just so many areas in military life, I learned, from being in the HBCU band, especially, pride in your squad, pride in your group, and I noticed a lot of those things were lacking in a lot of other bands people that came from a different culture than me, because a lot of them were, a little more surprised at the pride that I still kept and maintained for mine. Once theirs was over, and a lot of them were really shocked at my stories and kind of slightly envious, really, when I tell a lot of my stories about, HBCU band culture and how we were, the respected ones on campus. Like nobody, called us like nerds and stuff like that. Like we were respected. We were well respected. We had a pride that we didn't let nobody, mess with, which was totally foreign to a lot of them. But to answer your question, I would say, look into it, understand. One of the biggest things I would say is understand that it is the military. And a lot of people that I notice that have issues, or, that end up having kind of some of the problems, that's one of the kind of things they forget. And while there's a music side, and that music side is great at times, but there's also an Army side that is still apparent, and that's still a part of your job. And if you learn to balance that, and I think that's why I've had such a great career, to me, that was kind of highly void of a lot of the stress that a lot of other people's experiences, because I looked at the reality of that, and I took that how it came. And when the music time came, I took advantage of the music time. When the Army time came, you deal with it, and you just know that you got to know the structure, which is with anything. You got to know the structure of what you're getting into. So, but I would say go for it. Okay. I don't regret it. It's one of the best decisions I've made.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up, but I am so glad. I know we could have talked an hour longer.
I know.
I'm so glad that you agreed to do this, because I think your perspective is great. And so I will talk with you later.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
You have listened to the HBCU Band Experience with Christy Walker. Interviews and editing conducted by yours truly, Dr. Christy Walker. The music is District 4 by Kevin MacLeod, and you can find this podcast on HBCUbandexperience.podbean.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Take care.